The world's richest man's quest to slash the size of the U.S. government has reached Colorado. Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency is now listing spending cuts it says it made in Colorado. Our Mark Salinger looks at Doge's notoriously unreliable claims of savings.
They call it a wall of receipts. This is where Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency posts the federal contracts and real estate deals they say they've either cut or terminated. The website, full of hundreds of lines of supposed savings, is very difficult to search. And it's also led to confusion, like at National Jewish Health in Denver. Politico reported that Doge canceled a lung disease research contract with National Jewish that reporters found on the website. National Jewish told us they've not been informed of any cuts or cancellations related to the COPD gene research project that was mentioned on the website. That contract has since been taken off the list of Doge receipts. The Associated Press, New York Times, and others have reported inconsistencies between the wall of receipts and the true savings produced. The Times reports Doge quietly walked back its largest claims of cost savings. The AP found that 40% of the canceled contracts will produce no savings at all. So we've started going through every contract that relates to Colorado. In Boulder, nearly 4,000 square feet of office space leased to the U.S. Geological Survey at a cost of almost $50,000 a year was canceled. CU Boulder owns the building. The university says they received notice from the General Services Administration just yesterday that the lease would be terminated at the end of August. It's not clear where the people working there will go. In the small town of Craig in northwest Colorado, Doge says a 5-year lease for the Mine Safety Health Administration building has been canceled. The savings, the website says, total nearly $1 million. We tried getting in touch with the mayor and city council members in Craig to confirm, but haven't heard back. Calls and emails to the Mine Safety Health Administration in Craig also went unanswered. And in Grand Junction, Doge says termination deals are still being finalized to get rid of a lease that houses the Social Security Administration. The department alleges the lease costs more than $270,000 a year. We couldn't verify that through property records. We know that there are likely many more contracts as well and programs on the list of cuts that impact Colorado. So then once the cuts happen, the next question is, what happens to the people who work there? For example, we're still trying to figure out the changes to the Mine Safety Health Administration in Craig. We don't know what will happen to the employees that work there, along with the work that they do, Kyle.
It's tough to tell, Mark, if it is opaque by design or whether they're just moving so fast they don't even have time to answer questions about what they're doing.
Sure. The wall of receipts, like just to take you through the process, you can't just Control F and search Colorado. There's nothing that pops up. So the question now is, how do we go through step by step, one contract by one contract, and there are thousands, to figure out the impacts here on Colorado, because there are very real impacts on our state.
And certainly, if anybody wants to reach out to you with information, they can email us, next@9news.com, if you want to communicate securely. My Signal info is in all my social media profiles. Mark, thank you. The Trump administration is signaling that federal layoffs are just starting. Thousands of probationary employees have already been fired, and now federal agency leaders are being told to submit a plan for what's known as a reduction in force by March 13th. They're directed to lay off employees and then eliminate those positions. The memo says agencies should implement their plans by the end of September. For decades, the state of Colorado has been a particularly welcoming place for asylum seekers. Even before President Trump took office, asylum seekers were having a harder time getting approved to come here and stay. Our Julissa Irizarry has some key context on the numbers.
The website may look like it stepped out of 1996, but its data is as fresh as it gets. The latest numbers from the Track Research Center at Syracuse University show the roller coaster of rates when it comes to asylum approval.
We do not hand out asylum like cookies by any stretch of the imagination.
Violetta Chapin is an immigration attorney. She says grant rates change every month and could be because of policies, where people apply from, and the current state of the world. The top 5 nationalities with the highest rate of asylum grants during the 2024 fiscal year are all from countries in some kind of conflict.
We require persecution. It's a particular standard. And so it's hard to get in the first place.
In November, Track announced asylum grant rates dropped by a third in the last few months of Biden's administration to 35%. But crunching tracks numbers provided by fiscal year showed during President Biden's term, the average asylum approval rate was 45%. During President Trump's first term, the grant rate was about 31%. Chapin isn't sure if that will change.
Yeah, I think it's hard to predict, right? It really depends on what's happening in the world, right, which is outside of our control.
What the U.S. can control is how accessible they make the process. Trump's recent executive orders include a policy that requires asylum seekers arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border to stay in Mexico while their claims are processed. Another shut down an app that allowed them to schedule asylum appointments. Moves, Chapin believes, could restrict asylum approval.
We're at a moment where there's an extraordinary amount of public support for forcibly pushing out migrants from the United States.
It's important to point out lower rates of approval don't necessarily mean less people are coming in from those countries. For example, Afghanistan has an 88% grant rate and Colombia has a 16% approval rate, yet just 547 people were approved from Afghanistan and 1,100 were approved from Colombia.
Jaleesa, these processes can take so long. I mean, there could be somebody who applied for asylum during the first Trump administration, didn't get a hearing through Biden's years, and they're still waiting now.
And that's what makes it so complicated to pinpoint the exact reason as to why these approval rates go down, right? Chapin mentioned she has a client. It took 8 whole years to get the asylum approval. One has been waiting for 4.5 years, still doesn't have an interview.
Jaleesa Irizarry, thank you for that report. Like many families, the Colorado Republican Party tends to have its fights and meltdowns in public. Today, one faction of the party served another faction of the party with a lawsuit at an IHOP restaurant. As diners in Greenwood Village enjoyed the breakfast faves combo, the house scramble, and the pancake of the month, one candidate for the Colorado GOP chair dropped a double stack of litigation on the plate of a rival. This stems from the Republican Civil War over whether to replace current state chairman Dave Williams, who is accused of misusing party funds for his failed GOP primary bid for Congress and for the hassle he created for Colorado Republicans with his call to burn all pride flags. But back to the IHOP, home of the new spicy shredded beef anytime tacos, where the spicy lawsuit served this morning shreds the Republicans who tried unsuccessfully to force out Chairman Williams. She got Darcy Schoening, current party leader who's running for chair in next month's elections, who served papers this morning on Britta Horn, a rival candidate for chair who was part of the uprising. They were both at the IHOP for interviews with a local talk radio show doing a live broadcast from the Pancake House. Neither woman waffled when I reached out to him today. Schoening says Horn stole money from party donors. Horn called it a frivolous attack. You may recall the Colorado GOP has a bit of a history of airing its grievances at random businesses in the suburbs. In 2022, we dubbed it the Boot Barn Rebellion, when the faction of the GOP that's now in control was on the outside. They got turned away from the Republican Party offices, so they stood in the parking lot of the Western Wear Outfitter nearby, hollering that their party leaders were whores.
We have a Republican Party that is full of whores. They've not held to the U.S. Constitution. And then you wonder why these can't win a race.
Those Boot Barn rebels now lead the Colorado Republican Party, leading us to this morning's IHOP dust-up. So if you're buying boots or breakfast in the suburbs and you hear ruckus, might just be Colorado Republicans working things out. In Congress, House Republicans needed all but one of their votes last night to pass their budget framework. Details TBD, but it calls for $880 billion in cuts from the committee that oversees Medicaid and Medicare. Democratic Congresswoman Brittany Petterson flew in from Colorado last night with her 4-week-old baby in order to vote. Her decision to do that, after Republicans blocked her request to allow new parents to vote remotely, drew national attention. Petterson's part of a bipartisan effort to change congressional rules to allow new parents to vote remotely for up to 12 weeks. House Speaker Mike Johnson says proxy voting is unconstitutional. He's got a slim House majority, so any absent Democrats could be a deciding factor when the topic is controversial. Even though their budget blueprint ended up passing last night, Petterson told me she's glad she made that quick trip to D.C. with the baby.
Leadership that if there is any vote that there is a potential that I can make a difference, I'm going to be there. So I was hoping it was going to be, maybe a couple more weeks before I was traveling across the country with my newborn son, but they ended up pulling it up this week. So we made plans and I traveled Sam. And, we did make an impact. They weren't expecting me to be there. And I'm sure you were watching, but there was a big pause and scramble after the first vote before they brought up the resolution. They were ultimately able to get the votes, but it's going to also hold the Republicans accountable and put them on record that ended up having to vote yes to get this through.
Pedersen says she believes that remote voting for new parents does have enough votes to pass the House. Republican leadership just won't bring it up. She says their next stop, but it's a long shot, is what's called a discharge petition, where they gather signatures from a majority of House members, that would be all the Democrats and a bunch of the Republicans, in order to force a vote. Last week, we told you about the small museum in Boulder County that lost all but one sponsor for its Girls in Science event because the sponsors feared the federal government would pull their funding if they supported the event. Community members more than chipped in enough to cover that Girls in Science event at the museum. There is a much larger organization that helps girls in the Denver metro area that's facing an even larger federal funding cutback. That's why this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports Girls Inc. The mission of that nonprofit is to help girls reach their full potential from first grade through college, helping them grow up healthy, educated, and independent. Girls Inc. does that through long-term mentoring and programming that helps girls bust through the barriers put up by their gender and their family's financial status. It's a leadership program focused on girls' mental health, physical health, confidence, and emotional success through after-school programs, summer programs, college prep, scholarships, internships. Girls Inc. tells me they were recently notified they would be losing $70,000 in federal funding because of quote-unquote gender ideology. Now, Girls Inc. is a large enough nonprofit, strong enough to weather that kind of funding loss, but it will make an impact. So can we. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get that link to donate. Your $14 million and counting in microgiving has proven the power of small donations. You know the deal. I'm never going to ask you to give your money if I don't give my money. So as always, I'll match the first 50 donations of $5 to get us rolling. And more than 4,000 of you have signed up to simplify your giving with a monthly donation to the Word of Thanks Fund. That has become the heart of this program. It means that we've started your recent weekly microgiving campaigns with more than $30,000 for each nonprofit. That is huge for these groups. You can use the same QR code or text to get there. Egg prices keep rising. Federal government says it can solve the problem for $1 billion.
Every person that comes in just asks our bartenders, what happened to the patio? What happened to the patio?
One of the last vestiges of the pandemic, something that a lot of people liked, is going away across Denver. That's next. Eggs aren't expected to get cheaper anytime soon. The U.S. Department of Agriculture predicts that egg prices will increase more than 40% this year. USDA says it's largely because of the widespread bird flu outbreak. CDC numbers show bird flu has impacted more than 3 million chickens in Colorado since January of last year. In an op-ed in the Washington Post, the head of the USDA says they have a $1 billion plan to mitigate the spread of the flu and bring down egg prices. The money, they say, would come from Elon Musk's spending cuts. The plan involves biosecurity measures, reimbursing farmers that have affected flocks, reducing egg regulations, and temporarily importing eggs to the U.S. The plan stops short of authorizing bird flu vaccines for chickens, but the feds say they are exploring that idea.
Sunny, not as windy, and cooler. Actually, a really nice day with afternoon temperatures in the upper 40s and lower 50s. While a whole lot colder than yesterday's high of 70, this is actually average for this time of year. And still comfortable out there right now. The sun has set 40 degrees in Denver with light winds out of the north. And this light wind trend looks like it will continue, even with a little weather system crossing central and southern Colorado. A warm weather trend until early next week, then in comes a storm that could bring not only cooler weather Monday into Tuesday, but a chance of rain and snow to the state. So we're tracking this for early next week. Between now and then, smooth sailing and comfortable weather conditions. Temperatures in the 40s will drop into the lower 30s tonight. Into the 60s we go for Thursday, Friday, and the first weekend in March. It's Monday into Tuesday, potential weather impact days for colder weather and a chance of rain and snow.
A brewery in Denver is moving around seating to make room for 3 cars. Hey, a reminder, you can catch this program streaming each night at 6 p.m. on 9 News Plus. It's free to download on your TV. And Next is also a podcast each weeknight, wherever you get your podcasts. For me, a 60-degree day in winter calls for a long walk with the dog and kids. There was a day not too long ago when it would have sent me to grab a nice patio beer. Although these days, businesses, including breweries, that expanded their outdoor spaces during the pandemic face a new reality.
Yeah, it's February and it's a comfortable day on the patio. When the pandemic hit, Denver worked on the Outdoor Places program. So we used to have this entire parking lot. So this fence, is new that we built in the past 2 months. And we just had tables and chairs and, community gathering and dogs and families all the way from me to that fence and then out up until the curb. That was really kind of our core identity over the last 5 years and something people came here for. Denver's phasing out the Outdoor Places program and rolling it into regulation they already have set for parking. I'm sitting in, some of the newer patio expansion that we just got finalized through permitting. We've been working on it over the past year to get this done, but finally got it approved, and it results in, I don't know the exact percentage, but somewhere around 40% of our patio is what we retained.
We've seen well over 100 businesses take advantage of the Outdoor Places program. We realized that during COVID there were benefits to having that patio space, and we want to allow businesses to still have these patios, but within the zoning codes and within the rules that respect health, safety, and parking. The zoning code says you have to have so many parking spots in that area. So it did reduce the size of the patio, but there still is a patio outside.
We can benefit a whole lot more as a business from 40 to 50 extra seats than we can 3 parking spaces. Every person that comes in just asks our bartenders, what happened to the patio? What happened to the patio? That's what we were known for 5 years. And now people are like, well, it's so much different.
It's not just the patio. Sean was telling us he's worried about how Denver's Colfax Bus Rapid Transit project is going to impact his place over the next few years as well. We are back with your feedback about girls and boys next. Thank you. So a whole bunch of you reached out asking if we would do a Word of Thanks micro-giving campaign to support that museum in Boulder County we told you about that was scrambling to find sponsors for its Girls in Science event. Sponsors had pulled out fearing federal retribution. That event is fully funded thanks to the community. But the nonprofit Girls Inc. in Denver is facing what it says is a much larger loss in federal funding. That nonprofit helps girls elementary school through college reach their potential through intensive mentoring programs with women and internships and scholarships, summer programming, after-school programming. They do great work. They've been doing it for a long time. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get the link to join me and a bunch of others in donating to Girls Inc. A note from Steve, who writes in to say, I have never given to Word of Thanks until now, but is the father of 2 wonderful girls who became accomplished women. Tonight, I start. Jim says, Kyle, you are behind the times in supporting Girls Inc. Our country's biggest social problem is the failing boys, not the girls. Open your eyes. Well, Jim, I would welcome your suggestions of any great nonprofits in Colorado that are supporting young men. We've actually featured a number of them over the last 5 years through Word of Thanks. What we're not going to do is stop supporting the girls as well. We'll see you next time.